Today we are going to talk about revenue operations. It's a series of 5 videos. And part 1 is why revenue operations matter. So welcome. Over the next 5 episodes, we're going to talk about something that's probably costing you millions in revenue and you don't even know you're losing. And it's called revenue operations. And if you don't have it in place, you're flying blind. So let me paint a picture I've observed several times. Your sales team, they use Salesforce one way, marketing has HubSpot, and they're measuring success differently. Customer success is tracking renewals in their own system, separate system. And finance, they're pulling data from all three, trying to reconcile the numbers and trying to find gaps. Everywhere there are gaps, and then try to figure it out. Does this sound familiar? Here's what this actually is costing you. Your CAC is probably higher than you think because marketing and sales are not aligned on what a qualified lead actually is. Your forecast accuracy is terrible because everyone is working from different definitions of pipeline stages. Your customer lifetime value calculations are guesses because the handoff between teams lose critical data. I've observed a SaaS company that thought that they had 72% gross retention. And when we actually integrated the data across systems, it was 58%. That is not a rounding error, that's a valuation problem. When you're building a model for your board or preparing for a financing round, that 8-point, 10-point, 15-point difference could mean a 20 to 30% swing in your valuation multiple. Investors price predictability, and you cannot be predictable when your systems are not talking to one another. So let me get more specific about what this fragmentation costs. I've observed companies spending enormous amounts on technology, the very best-in-class CRM, the very best-in-class marketing automation, good customer success platforms, great visualization tools, good BI tools. And they're paying for integration supposedly, but nobody owns the integration. IT says it's a business problem. Sales operations says marketing needs to clean their data. Marketing operations says sales does not follow through the process of going through the warm leads. And meanwhile, you're sitting in a QBR looking at the 3 different pipeline reports that don't reconcile and trying to decide whether to hire 5 more sales reps or invest in another couple of marketing campaigns. How do you go about doing that? Here's a personal example that I'll share with you. I was working in a B2B software company. They were doing about $30 million in ARR, and they're growing nicely on paper. But the CEO was frustrated because despite hitting their bookings numbers every quarter, cash collection was inconsistent and churn was creeping up. But marketing was saying that they were delivering qualified leads that sales were not taking advantage of, and sales said they were closing deals, and the customer success said they were doing their job. Everyone had dashboards proving they were successful. But when I kind of dug in, and here's what I found. Marketing was optimizing for lead volume because that's what they were being measured on. Sales, they were closing deals with customers that fit the ICP or the ideal customer profile, on paper, but they required extensive customization to actually use the product. And customer success, it was inheriting these high maintenance customers without any context about what was promised during the sale and what was the result. The implementation cycles running 90 days over plan, services costs eating into gross margin, and customers churning after their first renewal because they never got the value they expected. So really, nobody was lying, right? No one is incompetent. The systems were just optimized for local maxima instead of the global revenue growth. And that becomes extraordinarily expensive. Revenue operations exist to solve this. It's not just another layer of management. It's not sales ops with a new title. It's a function that ensures your entire revenue engine, from first marketing touch to renewal and expansion, they operate as one integrated system with one source of truth. So now let me be clear about what I mean by one source of truth, because this phrase gets thrown around a lot. I'm not talking about forcing everyone to use one tool. That is often impractical, and sometimes it's counterproductive. I'm talking about having one authoritative version of key metrics, a definition of what a qualified lead is, a consistent way of staging the deals, an integrated view of customer health, a forecast that everyone from the CMO to the CFO to the CRO agrees represents reality. I've observed that when companies get this right, remarkable things happen. The forecast accuracy, it improves dramatically. I'm talking about going from plus or minus 20% accuracy to plus or minus 5%. Sales cycle compress because friction gets removed from the process. Win rates improve because you stop chasing deals you'll never close. Customer lifetime value increases because the handoffs between teams preserve the context and the relationship quality. But perhaps most importantly, the exec team stops spending half their time arguing about whose data is right and starts spending their time making strategic decisions based on data they trust. I've sat in exec meetings where the first 45 minutes is reconciliation theater. Everyone is defending their numbers, questioning everyone else's method, and ultimately making decisions based on gut feel because no one trusts the data. And that's what happens when you don't have established revenue operations in place. The companies that build very strong and stable revenue operations engine, they grow faster and more predictably. They can tell you with confidence what will happen next quarter, not just what they hope will happen. They can model the scenarios accurately. What happens if we increase marketing spend by 30%? What happens if we shift from transactional to enterprise sales? What happens if we raise prices by 15%? These are not guesses, they are projections based on integrated data and you understand conversion dynamics. The companies that don't have this, they scale their dysfunction. And let me repeat, they scale their dysfunction, and I've observed what happens next. Growth slows despite increased investment. Margins compress, the executive team fractures into camps. Sales blames marketing for bad leads, marketing blames sales for poor follow-up. Customer success blames both for signing the wrong customers, and finance just throws up their hands trying to forecast anything and everything. And here's a really painful part. The larger you get, the more expensive this becomes to fix. Now, I have worked with companies north of $100 million in ARR trying to retrofit revenue operations, and it's brutal. You're doing open heart surgery while running a marathon. You have to rip out and replace systems while hitting your quarterly number. You have to retrain hundreds of people on new processes while maintaining productivity. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. It is possible, but it's 10 times harder and more expensive than doing it right at $15 or $20 million in ARR. So that's why revenue operations matter now, not later. Because a dysfunction you can live with at 10 million in ARR will kill you at $50 million. The forecast inaccuracy that is annoying you at $20 million, those mistakes will make you unfundable at $100 million. The siloed data that causes friction at 30 million can create a gridlock at 75 million. So the next week we'll break down what revenue operations actually is, the architecture, the pillars, the capabilities. Because I find that most execs, they have a very fuzzy understanding of what this function actually does. And that fuzziness is what leads to misimplementation. I see constantly where companies hire for RevOps but don't set it up for success. So we'll go in detail in part 2 next week. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.